So, welcome everyone. I'm Alexander Mihalcea, and today we're joined by Debayan Ghosh, founder of Epygen Labs. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Alexander.
Before we dive in, could you give us a quick overview of what Epygen Labs does?
Yes, so Epigen is a biotechnology company. Actually, we were the first biotechnology companies to be set up in the Dubai Biotechnology Park, the Biotech Park. Today, you have large biotech companies that are set up here, but we were the first company to set up here. Now, we are into industrial biotechnology as well as biopharmaceuticals, both these areas. So for Dubai, we focus mostly on industrial biotech, and in India, we do biopharmaceuticals. There we have facility to do research and development as well as manufacturing of various biopharmaceutical molecules for critical ailments. Yeah, so that is in a nutshell what Epigen does.
Right. That's fascinating. And what inspired you to create Epygen Labs? Was there a specific moment or experience that sparked this journey?
Yeah, so Epigen Labs is, this the company in Dubai is called Epigen Labs. The company in India is called Epigen Biotech. We
Okay.
also have office in the United States which looks after our IP and intellectual property, etc. So, the journey with Epigen had been, I'm a biotechnologist by my education, and I used
Okay.
to work for one of Asia's largest biotech company based in Bangalore called Biocon. So that is where my journey started after my college. And then I worked for a company in south of Florida for 7 years. And then we started Epigen. So before starting Epigen, I learned how biotechnology can add value to human life.
Yeah, right.
In terms of so industrial biotech and biopharmaceutical, both the areas. See, biotechnology is actually the knowledge of utilizing, proteins or
Right.
live creatures for benefit of mankind, whether it
Mm-hmm.
is for processing food, making food like yogurt, or making pharmaceuticals like cancer drugs, uh,
Right.
diabetes drugs, or making the biofuel to replace the environmentally polluting fuel. So so that is what is biotechnology. So after getting some good experience on how biotechnology can be utilized to create value. I started this company, Epigen, 2006 is when we started this as the first company in Dubai Tech Park. And yeah, so since then, the first few years, we're focusing on industrial biotech. So, in the biotechnology where you need to produce these microbial proteins,
Mm-hmm.
which to be utilized for either industrial application or healthcare application. The starting point is more or less the same. You
Yeah,
have
right.
the nature produces proteins, and then you recombine those microorganisms to produce the protein of your interest. So
Right.
you identify what is a protein of interest, and then you produce those proteins in a fermenter. And then so it starts from the molecular biology, genetic engineering, then bioprocess, expressing those proteins in the right quantities, and the right characteristics of your interest, purification, and then utilizing them for the industry is industrial biotech, and utilizing them for healthcare is biopharmaceuticals. So
Yeah, right.
yeah, so to simply put it, the first several years I was focusing on industrial biotech because
Okay.
that is, in terms of regulatory, that is much easier, in terms of regulatory, framework.
Right.
Uh, okay, but then after 6 years of doing industrial biotech, we started our healthcare biotech facility. In 2011, we started healthcare biotech in India. and then the same path, like I said, genetically modify proteins, organisms to express the protein of your interest, purify them, and develop various drugs for critical ailments like cardiovascular,
Right.
oncology, diabetes. So that's what we're doing in the biopharmaceutical in India, in Epigen
Yeah,
Biotech.
that's interesting. Interesting. So let's go back when you first started. And what major challenges or gaps did you see in the market that made you think this needs to be solved?
Yes, starting point. So we started, like I told you, we were the first company to set up in the Do Biotech Park, and there was a tremendous pressure on the energy sector, the oil and gas industry, because of the environmental reasons. We all know that it's being discussed
Yeah.
all the time. So we thought, why don't we utilize biotechnology to clean up the act of producing fossil fuel? So that was our first step into industrial biotech. So we started developing some biological solutions to replace harsh chemicals in fossil fuel production, for that
Yeah.
matter. So
Right.
conventionally, fossil fuel, when the wells are drilled, in the olden times they used to drill vertical wells. These days they do horizontal wells, and then they use something called a drilling biopolymer mud,
Yeah.
which helps in the drilling process. But then the biopolymer conventionally was being cleaned using very harsh chemicals like acids, oxidizers, which were not only bad for the formation, it was also bad for the environment, for the aquatic
Yeah. Yeah.
life. So we took that problem to the table and designed a biological solution, which is nothing but 100% protein. So
Right. Right.
now this protein can break down the biopolymers very efficiently, and 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 look what I mean. It not only increases productivity of the oil wells by 50, 60%, and it is so clean. It is 100% biodegradable, good for the environment, for aquatic life. So that is our how we started our journey in the oil and gas biotech. So we call it oil and gas biotechnology. So we are one of the pioneers in oil and gas biotechnology. Utilizing our knowledge across in multiple regions in the Middle East, parts of Europe, in South Asia. So yeah, so that is how we started our solving the industrial biotech solution. Subsequently, we also then started looking at renewable material.
Right.
Okay, so in the renewable material, with the advent of with this what should I say, the online
Mm-hmm.
business, where a lot of purchases happens online,
Right.
and material commodities are delivered in packages which should not be environmentally polluting. So plastic was being replaced with paper. Okay,
Yeah.
so polyester was being replaced with paper. Now, so paper is absolutely eco-friendly. They're biodegradable, but to produce paper, you need to get the pulp from trees. So you
Yeah.
need to cut trees. So that's is like a double whammy here. Okay, you need to cut trees to make paper to replace polymers. So what we did is we started looking at recycled paper. Recycled paper is when you after cutting the tree, when you make the paper, okay, then there's certain amount of paper which is not bleached, they remain brown. That is what you call craft paper or brown paper, which you see a
Mm-hmm.
lot in the packaging industry.
Right.
Okay,
Right. Right.
that's recycled paper. So that brown paper goes on being recycled time and again.
Ah. Okay.
Okay, and that's called OCC, old corrugated cardboard. So
Mm-hmm.
that is converted again into pulp, and then again into paper. Then again goes back to after being utilized by it goes back to the pulper, and again becomes paper and the boxes and so on and so forth.
I see.
However, it was observed that the recycling can only be done X number of times.
Right.
Beyond that, the fiber loses the properties to be recycled. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
So what we did is we designed a system of enzymatic, refining, etc., of the pulp in such a way that you can now recycle this brown pulp many times, several times more, because this enzyme brings in the properties in a recycled pulp almost exactly same as the your virgin pulp, which is just like as if it is
Yeah,
just come from the trees. So you go on recycling many more times. The net results is you don't need to cut so many trees anymore.
yeah,
So to
right.
produce same amount of pepper, now you're cutting much lesser amount of trees. So first was oil and gas biotech, replacing harsh chemicals with biodegradable products, and then renewable material recycling, and then subsequently also into biofuels, which I will explain to you later on.
Right, right. That's an awesome information.
Thank you,
So,
thank you.
I have a curiosity by this. So, what are the biggest challenges in scaling up biofuel production using enzymatic processes?
So the biggest challenge, this very is a very technical question. Okay, so the thing is that when you make a industrial biotech enzyme or a protein of interest, first of all you need to know that the proteins, whatever inactivity it does, depends a lot on its three-dimensional configuration.
Right.
Okay, the same protein A and protein B may have the same chemical formula, that is their amino acid sequence, etc., can be the same, but just because the orientation is different, it can do different functions.
Hmm.
So first of all, imagine these are very large molecules. Okay, these are like chemicals are measured in daltons. Okay,
Right.
16 daltons, 30 daltons, but these proteins are measured in kilodaltons, 200 kilodaltons, so they're very large molecules. So, the number of molecules going up, the size of the molecule going up, the possibilities become endless. And then on top
Okay.
of that, various orientation, the three-dimensional orientation is offering, different kind of activities of these proteins. So depending on your application, you modify the protein by using proteomics, by using genetic modification, by
Yeah.
protein engineering, and so on. And so that is how, first of all, you need to, make a, what should I say, the sample protein of your interest in laboratory. Then you take it to the pilot scale. Because the moment you start moving up the scales, a lot of things starts changing,
Yeah. Right.
because the same protein, when it is produced in the shake flask in the laboratory, the microorganisms behave in a different way. But when you take it to a pilot scale fermenter, a larger scale for the microorganisms, say, let's say, put it simply, now the microorganisms got larger
Yeah.
place to play around, playing field becomes larger, they started behaving differently. End of the day, they're living creatures.
Right.
So then you need to modify your process, because your end result will have to be the same, right? Your end product cannot be different from the flask scale to the pilot scale to the plant scale. So you have to keep on modifying your process, whether it's the fermentation or the purification, so that finally you achieve at the same target protein of your interest. So these are the challenges. So this is quite complex because,
Yeah.
like I said, uh, even for example, in the purification process, so when you are purifying the protein, depending on the scale, the purification, parameters change.
Yeah.
One
Right.
of the
Right.
important, so just for one example, one of the important aspects of purification is, for example, chromatography. Okay, chromatography is where you have a resin, which the polymer, which has
Yeah.
affinity for a certain kind of a protein and does not like other proteins. So you run your protein mix of your liked and unliked, so unwanted protein and your protein of interest through the column which has got the resin. So the resin holds on to the protein of interest and the
Mm.
other proteins run out. And then you elute the protein, and this time the resin leaves them. So finally, what you're getting is a purified form of your protein of interest, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
you see, so this is it, to put it very simply, the chromatography. Now this resins holding onto the protein also depends on what is the total amount of protein coming in, what is the flow rate, the quantities, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so this all needs to be scaled up very efficiently.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And what was the breaking point that made decide you to tackle this problem?
So, like I said, one was the oil-filled biotechnology, industrial biotech, which was very important because, I realized that, the fossil fuel energy sector is very important. I mean, still a lot of importance is given to the energy business. However, we all know that the problems of the current, the hydrocarbons and the fossil fuel are with the environmental pollution. So that had to be, looked at. At the same time, in the biopharmaceutical area, let's say the total pharmaceutical business globally is, let's say, $1.5 trillion. 75% of that is going to be biopharmaceuticals by another 20 years' time. And why is it so? Because biopharmaceuticals simply has much lesser side effects. They're specific, they're targeted.
Yeah,
So, chemical drugs are not so specific. They're more like a wide spectrum
yeah,
action, whereas biologics are very specific, targeted therapies. So they have minimized side effects. And also, many of these biological drugs can conduct what should I say, cascades of activity which proteins are which smaller chemicals are not able to handle.
hmm,
So so the all the critical care, critical ailment drugs in today's world are shifting towards biotech drugs. Those are large molecules. So you have the
yeah,
small molecule chemical drug and the large molecule biological drugs. So this is why it is so important to produce the biopharmaceuticals. And like one of the areas that we focused was in cardiovascular, uh, for thrombolysis of clots.
yeah,
See, this is the beauty of biotech. In the oil and gas, we use an enzyme that breaks down the biopolymer that is blocking the oil to come out. Okay,
right.
to put it simply, right? So after the oil well is drilled, the biopolymer is blocking the fuel to come out. So we are using an enzyme to break it down efficiently. Okay, so something similar, enzyme or zymogen, which is a precursor for enzyme, can be utilized to clean up the artery, which is allowing the blood to flow to heart. So,
Really?
yeah, so when it is, when the heart attack happens, myocardial infarction happens, there's something called STEMI, the ST elevated myocardial
Yeah,
infarction, where S and T peaks are high. That means there's a blockage somewhere in the artery. So that blockage is caused due to, it's a clot. Okay,
yeah,
we call it thrombus. Now, this thrombus is a very tough material. Blood clot is very tough. You cannot dissolve it with acids. You cannot break it down or cut it down. It's very clot. Nature has made clot very hard to stop bleeding. But when it happens in the wrong place, it's a big problem.
yeah.
So yeah. So when it forms in the artery, it's called a thrombus, which is blocking the blood now to go to heart. And if it continues for some time, then a large amount of heart tissue would be damaged. And it cannot be repaired. So what is required is to solubilize the thrombus. So, like I said, some modification of proteins to produce the zymogen, which will then convert plasminogen to plasmin, which will break down the fibrin finally
Yeah.
solubilizing the thrombus, and the blood will flow back to the heart, and the heart tissues will be resurrected. So, this is how the necessities of inventing biological molecules had been happening, and that is what has given this world various biological molecules, be it for industrial or for biopharmaceutical applications.
Right, right, makes sense. So, walk us through how Epigen Labs addresses these challenges. What makes your approach unique?
So our approach, see, every biotech molecule is kind of unique in its own way, because like nature, like no two creatures can be exactly same.
Right.
Okay, so the uniqueness of see, for example, we have our own U.S. patents, the Middle East patents, the Indian patents on various technologies that we offer. So those are unique technologies where we have developed molecules for the industrial biotech applications, for healthcare applications. Like I said, every molecule is different in its application. Okay, what it does. Okay, and how it does that. So to achieve that, for example, for example, there are some molecules our team had been working for thrombolizing a clot in the brain. Okay, that's called brain stroke. So there are multiple ways of solubilizing brain stroke thrombus. There's something called tissue plasminogen activator, and we have our technology based on streptokinase, which is a zymogen, which will again break down the thrombus. So the uniqueness is that like I say, either this can this treatment be given as a bolus, or it has to be infused through to infusion. So whether the patient can sustain a infusion when the patient has actually had a brain stroke, whether the stroke is how serious it is, what is the window. There is a window of opportunity within which the treatment has to be registered, administered. And see, for example, the earlier treatments, they had to be administered within 1.5 hours of the window. Otherwise, it would not going to work. So now we're trying to develop a technology by which you can actually increase the window to 8 hours. And once that happens, you understand that makes life so much easier for the healthcare fraternity to address the patient. So, this is just one example. So in biopharmaceuticals, there's so much, unique technologies, processes, and finally the drugs and the way they work are also very different from each other.
Right, and for example, how are your enzyme solutions revolutionizing the fossil fuel industry compared to traditional chemical processes?
Okay, so the fossil fuel, see, like I said, the traditional chemicals, when they were used to clean up the wells after drilling the well bore, you leave the impermeable biopolymers inside the
Right.
well bore, which is coming in the way of productivity of oil. Now, conventionally, they were using acids, harsh acids, oxidizers, and the problem with harsh acids and oxidizers is that, like I told you, not only these acids, they cannot break down biopolymers efficiently. Okay, so the acid was actually solubilizing the calcium carbonate part, but the biopolymers were mostly remaining. So the
Right.
driller was under the impression that he has cleaned up the well and he goes on producing, but after a couple of years, the productivity starts coming down. So it was observed that many of the wells, that if it produces 100 barrels per hour in the beginning, first 6 months, then the next 6 months it becomes 75, then 50, then 30. So it keeps on
Mm-hmm.
coming down. Now that is because a lot of these biopolymers, which was in the downhole situation, was still remaining because the conventional systems couldn't clean them up. Now with the enzymatic system, enzymes are very specific and they're very efficient, very large molecules. So 1 microgram of enzyme can actually solubilize a bucket load of substrate, because
Right.
enzyme does not get used up. They are biocatalysts. So the enzyme attaches to the substrate, forms an enzyme substrate complex, which is then converted into a product, and the enzyme comes out, and then it
Yeah.
again attaches. So it's a biocatalyst. So micrograms of these molecules can convert, catalyze large amount of chemistry, which chemicals are not being able to do. So you need a lot of harsh chemicals to do the same job which we are doing with micrograms of enzyme. So it is not only increasing the productivity of the wells, we have observed that some of the wells are now producing 50% higher amount of fuel, which is a great achievement for the wells. And they have been all published in SPE, and been patented also in international journals. They have been published, these results. The best part is, this is by utilizing 100% biodegradable, clean technology. So the people who are using these, they don't have to be worried. They don't have to take all the precautions that they need to take. Otherwise, when they're using harsh chemicals, the equipment which are handling these enzymes, they don't have to be so complicated. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
So so the total impact on environment, on people, the process, and at the end of it, productivity increase. All this put together is a fantastic proposition for the fossil fuel producer. So
Right.
they're really liking it, and it's being adapted across the world.
Okay. And then when you talk to potential clients, what's the biggest misconception they typically have about what you do?
Yeah. So like I said, so enzymes are high tech products. Okay. Biotech product. I'm just talking about industrial biotech now, not going into biopharmaceuticals, because that's again a huge area.
Right.
So in industrial biotech, enzymes, like I said, genetically modified, or conventionally modified proteins, but they're expensive. If you look at the per gram, chemicals are produced in tons. The
Mm-hmm.
enzymes are produced in grams. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so you can imagine that obviously the price, if you look at it, the face value, the cost of the enzyme looks very expensive. Hey, someone is using to buying an acid or a chemical, let's say $300 per drum, but now we're talking about enzyme protein, which is a couple of $1,000s a drum, and one would say, hey, this is so much more expensive. But then when you look at the utilization, where
Right.
you need tons of the chemicals, you're actually will have to use just a few kilograms of this enzyme. And so you look at the value
Yeah.
that it
Right.
is
Right.
delivering is much more. So initially the clients look at the price, say, hey, this is very expensive. But then when they see the value that it adds and the
Right.
utilization, then they realize. And that's usually a very critical point that one has to drive across.
Interesting. And also, could you share a specific success story of a client who saw significant results using your solution?
Yes. So our like I said, we have done substantial development in the region, and we are currently registered with some of the largest oil producing companies in the world, like Saudi Aramco. Uh, so we are in the most of the Middle East oil producing companies. We are working very closely with them. We have many publications with them. There are thousands of wells that are utilizing our enzyme technology. So it's actually several thousand wells have used our
Yeah.
technology so far and got benefited. And yeah, so it had been an interesting journey. While we took the technology to them, we worked very closely with their specific problems, because every region has a different drilling condition in terms of the temperature, the pressures, the depths, the formation. So
Right. Right.
depending on that, So our advantage, unlike chemicals, is we are biotechnology, so we could modify the enzyme in such a way that it could actually be suitable for your application. So in some parts of Europe where the drilling temperature is much lower, we make a different kind of enzyme for them. And some parts of Middle East where the temperatures are very high, the salinity is very high, the conditions are very harsh, we design the enzymatic system depending on that. So we go back to the organism, look for organisms in thermal stream for that matter, like thermophiles, take the gene out of them, put in our producing organisms, genetically modify them to produce a protein which will now withstand that kind of high temperature and salinity. And hey, you have a enzyme that starts working in this regional context. So that is how we modify our enzymatic solutions depending on what the applications are. Similarly, it happens also in biopharmaceutical area.
Okay, I see. And looking at the broader industry, what key trends are you seeing emerge?
Looking at which industry? If you could repeat the question, sorry.
The broader industry.
Oh, the broader industry. You mean the biotech industry?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the biotech industry trends, like I said, in the biopharmaceuticals, the very very important trend is now CDMO, the Contract
Okay.
Development and Manufacturing Organization. You know why? Because for example, a pharmaceutical company is working on cardiovascular, is working on oncology, okay, and also working on diabetes, okay, or immune disorders. Now
Right.
they can, their laboratories, the scientists would work in the labs to develop the molecules which are suitable for example, if it's a long acting, like insulin or glargine or aspart, which are different kind of insulins for diabetes, or whether it's a monoclonal antibody or it's a vaccine for that matter. So if you're identified a vaccine that may work on COVID, okay, and you also identified a protein which will work for cancer, you cannot produce them in the same facility at the
Yeah.
same time because
Yeah.
these are two different organisms. You know what I'm saying? And more often than not, they don't like each other. I'm just putting it simply because if you have one line of manufacturing of a vaccine to produce antigens against, for example, COVID or some other viruses, you cannot produce a therapeutic protein or a monoclonal antibody in the same line. Okay, so you'll have to. So imagine your scientists, 100 scientists in the laboratory, are developing, 20 molecules every year. You don't have 20 lines to produce all of them because you need to produce a certain quantity to check whether the protein is functional, whether the protein is effective in terms of, clinical trials.
Yeah.
So one thing is the concept, the proof of concept. It's a completely different thing is to produce sufficient amount of proteins to be able to run your clinical trials to understand this protein is good, it is safe, it is efficient. So once you do that, then you think about commercial manufacturing. So these are the three stages. So you can have 100 molecules that proof of concept is excellent. You can probably do 10 molecules which you can take to the clinical trial level, and only 2 of them you can take into manufacturing. You know what I'm saying? So now large pharmaceutical companies who are smart in developing this, identifying this, the concept of this proteins that will work, they are outsourcing, protein making and development to the clinical stage from the CDMO companies. So there are a lot of biotechnology companies who are coming up who are capable to do this work for other clients who will
Yeah.
make the development and the so contract development and manufacturing. So there's estimated $100 billion of CDMO that is going to happen in another 5 years time. That's like outsourcing of technology development by the Western Europe and the United States alone in the coming 5 years. And so that is one of the big trends for the biotech companies. And also, like I was mentioning, biofuel.
Right.
Biofuel, the future of energy. So renewable energy. So the fossil fuel reserves are limited. Okay, you need 1 million years to produce more fossil fuel. So, but renewable energy can be produced from renewable
Yeah.
material
Right.
like biomass. The second generation biofuel is not even human food or animal food, because the first generation biofuel was coming from human animal food, but then there's a competition with the human animal. But now we're talking about biomass, which is non-human animal food, which can be converted into ethanol by biotechnological process very efficiently. So that is a major area, because these fuels, they burn clean. They can utilize renewable material, so you can produce it over and over again. And so that is the future for energy. So, and that is also biotechnology. So how efficiently you can break down that biomass into convertible sugar. So the key is of biofuel is in that, and that efficiency depends on the enzyme. So how efficient is your enzyme to break down the biomass, okay, which is switchgrass or corn stovers or etc., which is not human food, into fermentable sugar. It depends on the kind of
Yeah.
the enzyme, and then which organism will produce that enzyme efficiently. So it has been observed that for example, you must have seen white rot fungi, okay,
Right.
which grows on wood. So they are fungi. They utilize wood. So they metabolize wood, so digest wood. So they produce some kind of enzyme, okay, and then by that they convert the wood into their food and they survive. Now they produce that enzyme in a very, very small quantity. So if you take that gene and put it in an organism which can produce much larger quantities
Yeah.
of protein, then what will happen? The same enzyme will now be produced by another organism, which is a powerhouse of manufacturing of protein in much larger quantities. So that
Right.
is very key here, because you need to cut cost of converting the biomass into fermentable sugar to make it, sustainable for
Yeah.
against in the as utilization as a biofuel.
Right. And how are these trends affecting how businesses operate in your space?
You mean what are the strengths of our company?
Yeah.
Uh,
So
can
these
you?
trends. Yeah. Yeah. How these trends affecting how businesses operate in your space?
Oh yeah. So are you asking what are the new trends for the trends of business in this biotech
Right.
business?
So you mentioned these trends that will evolve, right? So
Yes.
how these trends affected how businesses operate in your space?
Okay. So, like I said, biopharmaceutical is the potential is in trillions of dollars. In large pharmaceutical companies are focusing into biopharmaceutical now. So there's a tremendous amount of biopharmaceutical potential. Epigen, Biotech in India, we have
Yeah.
multiple molecules in insulin manufacturing, various other cardiovascular molecules itself. Our business trends are pretty promising now for the biopharmaceutical area. We have multiple drugs in our pipeline, which is very promising. And our people, our team, which is a very important, aspect of biopharmaceutical business, the scientific team. So, for example, we have more than 100 scientific people working in our, in our businesses. So they have really mastered their art. So they know how to express the protein of interest very well, efficiently, cleanly, affordably. All these are very important aspects. So yeah, so the biopharmaceutical business in India is really picking up, and in the industrial biotech, we are growing very well. I would say, our we are one of the largest oil and gas biotech companies in the world in recycle biotech in pulp and paper. We are also world leaders. So if you you refer the industrial biotechnology books, published from around the world, from Europe, etc. You see many of these industrial biotech chapters are authored by our scientists. So, and that gives us the recognition. And yeah, business is growing. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah, right.
exciting. Yeah.
Okay. And what do you think most business owners are getting wrong when they're trying to address this specific problem?
So, in biotech, very important is you need to have a long time perspective. Okay, it's not like chemical, many other businesses where you invest today and tomorrow you start, getting your benefits. Okay,
Yeah.
because this involves research. So, for example, if you make a biotech drug, vis-a-vis a chemical drug, a biotech drug invention, starting from the in the clone till the protein is produced, clinical trials, first animal trials, toxicology, clinical trials, and launching, it costs around $500 million to $1 billion.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's a huge number. Whereas the chemical drug can be, developed at 1/10 the cost.
Yeah.
Usually, the difference of cost between a non-biotech drug and a biotech drug is 1:10 in terms of cost and also in terms of time. But so, like you said, often industries and businesses, they're in a hurry. They're used to the chemical process, so they want to invest today, get the results tomorrow, and then they get frustrated. They don't have that backup plan. They don't have the last mile, strategy. So they run out of breath. But then one needs to understand that in biotech, you got to be patient, but then you will reap good harvest at the end. Because if you look at the world's largest selling drugs today, they're mostly biotech drugs.
Mhm.
Some of these biotech drugs are the business sizes of more than 20 billion US dollars each
Yeah.
molecule, which is a very large number by any standards. So
Right. Right.
patience and perspective, understanding the strategy for biotech business is very important, and one needs to understand that it's unique, but it has to be understood by the industry.
Yeah. Right. So that was my next question. So, what advice would you give to business owners who want to stay ahead of these changes?
Yeah, so my advice to the business owners would be, in this area, that you need to have your the long-term strategy. Okay, you need to plan, you need to be prepared to fail. Okay,
Yeah.
because if you're investing in a research of a molecule, you cannot be 100% sure that that's going to work.
Right.
Yeah, so there's also a possibility that it might not work. So you need to plan your strategy in such a way that if you don't succeed, you'll have to try again, another molecule, another modification, another pathway. Okay.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you realize that once you have the planning in place, plan A, plan B, plan C, your strategies, the last mile preparation, finally, when the molecule will see the day of light, then either you launch a molecule, which could be a novel, biological entity. See, novel biological entities, like I told you, there are hundreds of billions of dollars
Yeah.
are being spent on novel biological entities. They're huge. There are also biosimilars. When the novel biological entities, they go off patent, when they climb down the patent cliff, then the patent is no more. So there are other companies can actually make the similar protein, which are called the follow-on biologics or the biosimilars. And biosimilars are now becoming very big because the biosimilars are usually much more affordable, you know. So those cancer drugs, molecular antibodies, which was very expensive, could hardly be afforded by patients across the world. Now, actually, the biosimilars or the follow-on biologics of those drugs have actually reached even the poorest of the of the patients, because they are being produced much more efficiently,
Right.
being follow-on biologics. So yeah, so that is the thing. One has to keep that in the perspective. One is your innovation, your thrill of innovating a solution, whether it's a healthcare solution, industrial solution. But very important to keep in mind that what good is science if it is not affordable by people
Yeah.
to use it, whether it is technology or it is a drug.
Yeah.
If you
Right.
if you make a very good biopharmaceutical molecule, but if it cannot be accessed by the masses, then what good is it for? You
Right.
see?
Right. Right.
Yeah, so you have to make the drug. So if you can make it smartly, efficiently, using the right kind of expression hosts, the correct scaling up, purification done efficiently, so you can actually make 100 times more of that drug at the same cost. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
this is the beauty of this biopharmaceutical. Usually in chemical, when you make A plus B, you get C. I usually use this analogy. So A plus B is C. So 2A, 2B is 2C.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
3A, 3B is 3C. But in biologics, 3A plus 3B can be million C,
Right.
depending on, how happy is the A and B. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
Right. Right.
I
Right.
mean, depending on how you modify your microorganisms, which hosts you choose, your platforms, you're going to express 100 times more amount of your drugs or your protein of interest at the same cost. So your cost comes down drastically, makes the
Yeah.
drug much more affordable, and that is the goal. Makes the drug affordable for people.
Perfect. So this is amazing, amazing advice.
Thank
And
you.
as we wrap up, what's next for Epigen Labs? Any exciting developments on the horizon?
Yeah, so we are focusing on increasing our applications in the oil and gas biotechnology into many other kind of applications. We were various kind of drilling processes can be assisted with the new technologies that we are developing in the recycled material. There's a lot of new applications that are also coming up. So all of our industrial biotech solutions are aimed towards sustainability. Okay, so we don't make any chemicals. We only make enzymes and biologics that can replace harsh chemicals, make processes simpler, cleaner, more efficient, more affordable. So basically, sustainability. So, like I always say, we our industrial biotech is to protect the environment and protect the planet, and the biopharmaceuticals are to protect the people in this planet, to
Right.
provide them medicines and drugs in an affordable way against ailments. For example, when COVID happened, we were working with our partners in the United States developing a vaccine. So there was, if you remember, there was something called Omicron BF5, which is the
Mm-hmm.
latest version of the coronavirus, which is the variant of concern. So we had developed a vaccine against that. So it is how efficiently you express the protein and make it affordable. Okay,
Yeah.
and
Right.
then remember, many of these viruses, for example, they're changing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, influenza, they're changing all the time. Okay, the viruses, they're the organisms, they're becoming resistant. So you
Right.
need to also adapt. If the organisms are smart, they are looking at what you are doing, they're adapting, they're changing, they're trying to defend themselves. So you need to also adapt your technology in such a way, modify it, make it smarter, utilizing tools of technology. Even artificial intelligence is used in a big way in understanding what is the next step. So you have to understand the next step the virus is going to take so much ahead that you can be prepared. We call it pandemic preparedness. So now
Right.
our teams are working on what could be future pandemics and how we should be prepared to face it so that we don't see a repetition of what happened a few years back, which is a big mess. It's a big
Right.
catastrophe. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And for listeners who want to learn more or potentially work with Epigen Labs, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, so our websites, we have two websites. One is epigen.com, the other one is epigenbiotech.com. So epigen.com is about industrial biotechnology. Epigenbiotech.com is about biopharmaceuticals. So we can be contacted through our websites. Our email addresses are available there. We are also, for example, for jobs, etc. We are always looking for bright people in the field of biotech, application industry, etc. And the team is growing all the time, and we appreciate people in contacting us, and we talk to them all the time.
Perfect, perfect. So thank you for sharing those insights about you, about your company, and about the whole story. And thank you for this amazing podcast session.
Thank you very much, and wish you all the best. Take care.
Great. So see you on the next episode. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.